Paris, 1909. The Belle Époque is in full bloom. The City of Lights is the undisputed capital of fashion, art, and elegance. Women in corseted gowns promenade along the Champs-Élysées. But behind the glamour lies a dangerous beauty secret. If you wanted to change your hair color in the early 20th century, you were quite literally risking your life. The dyes available were crude chemical concoctions, lead-based, toxic, capable of burning scalps and causing severe allergic reactions. Hair dyeing was the domain of stage actresses and society's fringes, women desperate enough to endure the pain and risk. Into this world stepped a young chemist with an ambitious vision. His name was Eugène Schueller, and he was about to transform an entire industry. Eugène Schueller was born in 1881, the son of a Parisian pastry chef. But pastries didn't captivate young Eugène. Chemistry did. He studied at the prestigious Institut National de Chimie Appliquée, graduating at a time when chemistry was revolutionizing everything from medicine to manufacturing. After graduation, Schueller took a job at the Sorbonne, working in the laboratories. The pay was modest. The work was predictable. But Schueller wasn't built for predictability. He watched wealthy Parisian women damage their hair with dangerous dyes, and he saw an opportunity that no one else seemed to recognize. What if you could create a hair dye that was both effective and safe? In 1907, at just 26 years old, Schueller began experimenting in his tiny apartment on the Rue de la Baume. Using synthetic organic chemistry, cutting edge for its time, he developed a formula he called Auréole. The name came from or, the French word for gold, evoking the lustrous color he hoped to create. The product worked. More importantly, it was safe. But having a better product is only half the equation. Schueller needed customers, and the beauty industry of 1909 was dominated by small boutiques, individual hairdressers, and a deep skepticism of anything scientific or modern. Schueller made a crucial decision that would define L'Oréal for the next century. He wouldn't sell directly to consumers. He would sell to hairdressers. This was strategic brilliance. Hairdressers were professionals, trained in their craft, trusted by their clients. If Schueller could convince them that his synthetic dyes were superior to natural alternatives, they would become his sales force. Every satisfied client would be a testimonial. Every successful color treatment would be an advertisement. He called his company the Société Française de Teintures Inoffensives, pour cheveux, the French company of harmless hair dyes. The name wasn't catchy, but it was honest. By 1909, he had formally launched what would become L'Oréal. Schueller spent his days visiting Parisian salons, carrying his bottles of Auréole, demonstrating the product, explaining the science. He was a chemist playing salesman, and he was remarkably good at it. Within a few years, his dyes were being used across Paris. But Schueller understood something deeper than just sales tactics. He understood that beauty was becoming democratized. The early 20th century was a period of profound social change. Women were entering the workforce in unprecedented numbers. The rigid class structures of the Victorian era were beginning to crack. Fashion was becoming more accessible, less constrained by aristocratic tradition. And Schueller recognized that beauty products would follow the same trajectory. His vision wasn't just to create better hair dyes. It was to make beauty accessible through science. This wasn't magic. This wasn't folk remedies or natural extracts marketed with mystical claims. This was chemistry, formulated in laboratories, tested for safety, and improved through research. In 1920, Schueller officially renamed his company L'Oréal. The name was simpler, more elegant, easier to pronounce. But the mission remained the same: beauty through science. Throughout the 1920s, L'Oréal expanded its product line: new dyes, new shades, new formulas for different hair types. Schueller hired more chemists, opened a proper laboratory, and began treating cosmetics development like pharmaceutical research. Rigorous testing, controlled experiments, documented results. This scientific approach gave L'Oréal a competitive advantage that went beyond marketing. While competitors relied on trial and error, L'Oréal was systematically innovating. While others made wild claims, L'Oréal could point to laboratory results, but Schueller was more than just a chemist turned entrepreneur. He was a businessman with grand ambitions. By the 1930s, L'Oréal had moved beyond hair dyes into soaps, shampoos, and other beauty products. The company had established a presence not just in France but across Europe. And Schueller had articulated a philosophy that would guide L'Oréal for generations: research and innovation in the service of beauty. This wasn't just a slogan, it was an operating principle. While many beauty companies focused on packaging, advertising, and celebrity endorsements, L'Oréal invested heavily in laboratories. By the 1930s, the company employed dozens of chemists and maintained multiple research facilities. This commitment to R&D created a virtuous cycle. Better products led to stronger sales, which generated more revenue to reinvest in research, which produced even better products. Competitors could copy a formula, but they couldn't easily replicate decades of accumulated expertise. There was something else shaping L'Oréal's identity during these formative years: the founder's personality. Eugène Schueller was brilliant, driven, and deeply flawed. His political associations during the 1930s and World War II would later become a source of controversy. But his impact on the company's DNA was undeniable. Schueller believed in centralized control, long-term thinking, and the power of science to transform industries. He built a company that wasn't focused on quarterly results or short-term trends. He was building an institution. By the time World War II ended, L'Oréal had established itself as France's leading beauty company. The foundation was set: a commitment to scientific research, a multi-product portfolio, and a distribution model that leveraged professional salons. But the company's greatest growth was still ahead. The post-war era would bring new leaders, new markets, and new challenges. L'Oréal would expand from a French company into a global empire, navigating cultural differences, competitive threats, and dramatic shifts in consumer behavior. The question wasn't whether L'Oréal would grow. The question was how a company built on Parisian elegance and laboratory science would translate that identity to the entire world. That story begins with the executives who followed Eugène Schueller, each of whom would leave their own indelible mark on the company. When Eugène Schueller died in 1957, he left behind more than a successful company. He left behind a question that has destroyed countless family businesses: who comes next? Schueller's daughter, Liliane Bettencourt, inherited his stake in L'Oréal. She was just 34 years old, already one of the wealthiest women in France. But Liliane understood something crucial: owning a company and running a company require entirely different skill sets. The decision she made would shape L'Oréal for the next half-century. François Dalle had joined L'Oréal in 1942, during the darkest years of World War II. He was young, ambitious, and possessed a rare combination of creative vision and operational discipline. Schueller had recognized his talent early, grooming him for leadership. When Schueller died, Dalle was named chairman and CEO. He was 41 years old. This was the moment when L'Oréal transformed from a founder-led company into a professionally managed institution. and Dahl understood that the beauty industry was about to change dramatically. The 1960s were arriving. Television was entering homes across Europe and America. Youth culture was exploding. Women were demanding more independence, more choice, more self-expression. The staid beauty industry of the 1950s, with its rigid standards and limited options, was about to be swept away. Dahl's first major strategic decision was to embrace mass marketing while maintaining premium positioning. This sounds simple, but it was revolutionary for the time. Most beauty companies chose one lane. You were either a luxury brand selling through department stores, or you were a mass-market brand selling through drugstores. Dahl rejected this binary. He believed L'Oréal could be both, serving different customers through different brands at different price points. In 1964, L'Oréal launched one of the most famous advertising campaigns in history. "Because I'm worth it." The tagline was perfect for its moment. It spoke to female empowerment without being overtly political. It positioned L'Oréal products as aspirational but accessible. It suggested that spending money on beauty wasn't frivolous. It was self-care, self-respect. But slogans alone don't build empires. Dahl was reshaping L'Oréal's entire business model. Throughout the 1960s and 70s, Dahl pursued an aggressive acquisition strategy, but these weren't random purchases. Each acquisition served a specific strategic purpose. In 1964, L'Oréal acquired Lancôme, the prestigious French luxury brand. This gave L'Oréal a genuine prestige division, competing directly with Estée Lauder and other high-end cosmetics companies. But Dahl didn't stop at luxury. In 1965, L'Oréal purchased Garnier, a mass-market brand with strong distribution in drugstores and supermarkets. Now, L'Oréal could reach consumers at multiple price points under different brand names. This portfolio strategy became L'Oréal's competitive moat. If you were a small beauty brand, you competed in one category. L'Oréal competed in all of them simultaneously. If luxury sales slowed, mass market picked up. If hair care plateaued, skincare grew. The portfolio provided diversification and resilience. Dahl also professionalized L'Oréal's management structure. He recruited talent from outside the beauty industry. Executives from consumer goods companies, marketing experts, financial analysts. He established formal training programs, performance metrics, and strategic planning processes. This was the managerial revolution that most family businesses resist. Dahl embraced it. He also made a decision that would prove prescient. He began expanding internationally in earnest, not just exporting French products abroad, but adapting to local markets, building local manufacturing, and respecting cultural differences in beauty standards. By the time Dahl stepped down as CEO in 1984, L'Oréal had become a truly global company with operations on every continent. Revenue had grown more than 30-fold during his tenure. But perhaps his most important contribution was establishing the principle of long-term leadership. Dahl had served for 27 years. This continuity allowed for patient strategy, deep institutional knowledge, and strategic consistency. His successor would take this principle even further. Lindsay Owen-Jones was an unlikely choice to lead L'Oréal. He was British, not French. He had joined the company only in 1969, working his way up through international operations. And when he became CEO in 1988, he was just 42 years old. But Owen-Jones possessed a quality that would prove invaluable. He understood that globalization didn't mean homogenization. The 1990s were the era of global brands. McDonald's, Coca-Cola, Nike. American companies were conquering the world with standardized products and universal marketing. Many analysts assumed beauty would follow the same path. Owen-Jones thought differently. He articulated a philosophy he called Universal values, local knowledge. L'Oréal's brands would maintain consistent quality and scientific credibility worldwide. But the specific products, marketing messages, and even brand positioning would adapt to local cultures. In Japan, L'Oréal products emphasized skin whitening and sun protection, reflecting local beauty standards. In Africa, the company developed products specifically for textured hair and darker skin tones. In the Middle East, marketing emphasized modesty and family values. This wasn't just cultural sensitivity, it was strategic brilliance. By adapting locally while leveraging global scale, L'Oréal could compete with both multinational giants and local insurgents. Owen Jones also accelerated the acquisition strategy. During his tenure, L'Oréal purchased dozens of brands across multiple categories and price points. Maybelline, in 1996, gave L'Oréal a powerhouse mass-market cosmetics brand with strong U.S. distribution. Soft Sheen Carson in 1998 gave them credibility in products for African-American consumers. Kiehl's in 2000 brought a cult following and authentic heritage. Each acquisition followed the same logic. Identify strong brands with loyal customers, maintain their identity and management, but provide L'Oréal's resources in R&D, manufacturing, and distribution. By the early 2000s, L'Oréal's portfolio included luxury brands like Lancôme and Giorgio Armani Beauty, mass-market brands like Garnier and Maybelline, professional brands like Redken and Matrix, and active cosmetics like Vichy and La Roche-Posay. The company could walk into any retailer, from Walmart to Sephora to department stores, with products to sell. Few competitors had that range. When Jean-Paul Agon became CEO in 2006, he inherited a company at the peak of its power. L'Oréal was the world's largest beauty company, with $17 billion in revenue and operations in over 130 countries. But Agon recognized that past success guaranteed nothing. The beauty industry was being disrupted from multiple directions. Digital media was fragmenting traditional advertising. YouTube beauty gurus were becoming more influential than magazine editors. Social media was allowing indie brands to build followings without retail distribution. Consumers, especially younger ones, were demanding transparency about ingredients, animal testing, and environmental impact. Agon's response was to modernize L'Oréal while preserving its core identity. He accelerated investment in digital marketing and e-commerce. L'Oréal became one of the first major beauty companies to embrace influencer partnerships, sponsoring YouTube creators and Instagram personalities. The company launched its own beauty tech incubator, investing in augmented reality tools that let customers try on makeup virtually. But Agon also recognized that technology alone wasn't enough. Consumers wanted authenticity, and that meant acquiring brands with genuine cultural credibility. In 2014, L'Oréal purchased NMYX Cosmetics, a brand beloved by makeup artists and young consumers for its quality and affordability. In 2016, they acquired IT Cosmetics, which had built a loyal following through QVC and authentic storytelling about skin concerns. These weren't just financial acquisitions, they were strategic learning opportunities. Each brand brought insights into emerging consumer trends, distribution channels, and marketing approaches. Agon also confronted issues that previous leaders had avoided. He committed L'Oréal to eliminating animal testing, improving sustainability across the supply chain, and increasing diversity in both marketing and leadership. These weren't just PR initiatives. They reflected a genuine understanding that the social contract between companies and consumers was changing. Younger generations didn't just buy products. They bought values. By the time Agon stepped down as CEO in 2021, he had served for 15 years. Combined with Owen Jones's 23 years and Dahl's 27 years, L'Oréal had been led by just 3 CEOs across nearly 4 decades. This continuity is almost unheard of in modern business. The average tenure for an S&P 500 CEO is less than 8 years. Tech CEOs often last even shorter. But L'Oréal's leadership stability created distinct advantages. First, it allowed for patient strategy. These leaders could make investments that wouldn't pay off for 5 or 10 years, knowing they'd still be around to see the results. They could enter new markets slowly, building infrastructure and local knowledge rather than seeking quick wins. Second, it preserved institutional memory. Each CEO deeply understood the company's culture, capabilities, and strategic logic. They didn't need to make their mark by tearing down their predecessors' work. Third, it created consistency for employees, partners, and investors. Hairdressers in Tokyo and retail buyers in New York knew what L'Oréal stood for because the message had been consistent for decades. The current CEO, Nicolas Hieronymus, who took over in 2021, represents both continuity and evolution. Like his predecessors, he rose through L'Oréal's ranks over decades. But he also brings fresh perspectives on sustainability, digital transformation, and changing beauty standards. What's striking about L'Oréal's leadership succession is how each CEO built on their predecessor's foundation, rather than rejecting it. Dahl professionalized what Schueller created. Owen Jones globalized what Dahl professionalized. Aegon modernized what Owen Jones globalized. Each transition was evolutionary, not revolutionary. This stands in stark contrast to many companies where new CEOs feel compelled to pivot dramatically, often destroying value in the process. L'Oréal's leaders understood something fundamental. Their job wasn't to be visionaries who reimagined the entire business. Their job was to be stewards who adapted L'Oréal's core strengths to changing market conditions. That discipline, knowing what to preserve and what to evolve, would prove essential as L'Oréal executed the strategies that transformed it from a French beauty company into a global empire. Those strategies weren't accidents. They were deliberate choices, refined over decades, that created one of the most successful business models in consumer goods history. In 1971, L'Oréal launched a hair color product called Préférence. The tagline was simple but powerful: the color that cares while it colors. The product wasn't revolutionary. The technology wasn't groundbreaking, but the positioning was perfect. L'Oréal was telling consumers they didn't have to choose between beauty and hair health. They could have both. This is the essence of L'Oréal's business strategy: finding the intersection between science and aspiration, between accessibility and premium quality, between mass market reach and luxury perception. For over a century, this approach has generated extraordinary returns. But understanding why requires looking beneath the surface at the specific strategies that made L'Oréal's business model so durable. The phrase "beauty for all" sounds like marketing copy, but at L'Oréal, it's been an operating principle that shaped everything from product development to pricing strategy. The core insight is this: everyone, regardless of income, deserves access to quality beauty products backed by real science. This democratic vision had profound strategic implications. First, it meant L'Oréal couldn't be just a luxury brand. Luxury, by definition, is exclusive. It's about limiting access to maintain prestige. But if beauty is for everyone, then L'Oréal needed products at every price point. Second, it meant innovation couldn't stay locked in luxury. When L'Oréal's laboratories developed a breakthrough ingredient or formulation, the company would eventually cascade it down through the portfolio. What appeared in Lancôme one year might show up in L'Oréal Paris 3 years later. and in Garnier 5 years after that. This strategy accomplished something remarkable. It allowed L'Oréal to justify premium R&D spending while amortizing those costs across multiple brands and price tiers. Consider how this worked in practice. L'Oréal's laboratories developed advanced anti-aging peptides. Lancôme launched Génifique, a luxury serum selling for over $100. The product became a bestseller, generating significant margins. But a few years later, similar peptide technology appeared in L'Oréal Paris Revitalift, selling for $20 at drugstores. Consumers at different price points both got access to genuine innovation. L'Oréal maximized the return on its R&D investment, and the company reinforced its positioning as science-driven across all segments. Competitors struggled to replicate this. Pure luxury brands like Estée Lauder couldn't credibly compete at mass-market prices. Mass-market brands like Unilever didn't have the same innovation engine or luxury credibility. L'Oréal occupied the middle ground, or rather, all the ground simultaneously. But managing multiple brands at different price points is extraordinarily difficult. The risk is cannibalization. Why would anyone buy Lancôme if L'Oréal Paris offers similar technology for 1/5 the price? L'Oréal solved this through brilliant brand architecture and segmentation. Each brand in the portfolio serves a distinct purpose and targets a specific consumer mindset. They're not competing with each other. They're offering different value propositions. Lancôme is about prestige, efficacy, and the experience of luxury. You're not just buying a serum. You're buying the feeling of being pampered at a department store counter, the elegant packaging, the French heritage. L'Oréal Paris is about accessible science and self-worth. The "because you're worth it" positioning says premium quality shouldn't be reserved for the wealthy. You deserve good products, regardless of your income. Garnier emphasizes naturalness and value. It's positioned as gentle, plant-based, and family-friendly, perfect for budget-conscious consumers who want effective products without complexity. The professional division, brands like Redken, Matrix, and Kerastase, targets a completely different channel. These products are only available through licensed salons, creating an exclusive distribution moat while building relationships with hairdressers. The active cosmetics division, La Roche-Posay, Vichy, CeraVe, is positioned as dermatologist-recommended therapeutic skincare. These products are sold through pharmacies, blurring the line between cosmetics and medicine. This architecture meant L'Oréal could enter any retail environment with the right brand. Department stores? Lancôme and Yves Saint Laurent. Drugstores? L'Oréal Paris and Maybelline. Amazon? NYX and Garnier. Sephora? Urban Decay and IT Cosmetics. Doctors' offices? SkinCeuticals. No other beauty company had this flexibility. And critically, each brand maintained its own identity, marketing team, and product development pipeline. They operated almost like independent companies, competing for internal resources, but not directly with each other for consumers. But the portfolio strategy only works if there's substance behind the marketing. This is where L'Oréal's commitment to research and development becomes critical. By the 2000s, L'Oréal was spending nearly $1 billion annually on R&D. More than any other cosmetics company. More than many pharmaceutical companies. The company employed thousands of scientists working in laboratories across France, the United States, Japan, China, and India. This wasn't just about developing new products. L'Oréal was conducting fundamental research into skin biology, hair structure, aging processes, and ingredient efficacy. The company filed hundreds of patents annually. It published research in peer-reviewed scientific journals. It collaborated with universities and research institutions. This wasn't typical behavior for a cosmetics company. It was the approach of a pharmaceutical giant. Why invest so heavily in science when most consumers can't distinguish between genuinely innovative ingredients and marketing claims? Because L'Oréal understood that scientific credibility created multiple forms of competitive advantage. First, it provided legal and regulatory protection. Many countries were tightening regulations around cosmetics claims. L'Oréal could substantiate its marketing with clinical data, while competitors relying on vague promises faced increasing scrutiny. Second, it created barriers to entry for indie brands. A small startup could create an Instagram-worthy brand with clever marketing, but they couldn't easily replicate decades of accumulated expertise in formulation chemistry, stability testing, and safety protocols. Third, it justified premium pricing. Consumers might not understand the science, but they could sense the difference between products that worked and products that made empty promises. L'Oréal's products generally delivered results, creating repeat purchases and brand loyalty. Fourth, it attracted top talent. The best cosmetic chemists wanted to work where the most interesting research was happening. L'Oréal's laboratories became training grounds for industry expertise. The R&D strategy also enabled one of L'Oréal's most clever tactics: speed to market with validated trends. Here's something surprising. L'Oréal rarely invents entirely new beauty categories. BB creams, invented in Asia. L'Oréal brought them to Western markets with superior formulations and marketing. Sulfate-free shampoos, indie brands pioneered them. L'Oréal scaled them through Garnier and L'Oréal Paris. Beauty supplements, startups tested the concept. L'Oréal entered with Ineov, backed by Nestlé's nutritional expertise. This fast follower strategy is often criticized as uncreative, but it's actually deeply strategic. Being first in a new category is expensive and risky. You have to educate consumers, establish manufacturing processes, and figure out distribution, all while not knowing if the trend will last. Most new beauty trends fail. L'Oréal lets smaller, more agile companies take those risks. The company watches carefully, learning from both successes and failures. And when a trend proves durable, L'Oréal enters with superior resources, distribution, and marketing muscle. This approach requires exceptional market intelligence and rapid execution capability. L'Oréal needed teams constantly scanning for emerging trends across multiple markets. And once leadership decided to pursue something, the organization needed to move fast, developing products, securing manufacturing capacity, and launching marketing campaigns within months. The company built this capability through its organizational structure. Regional teams had autonomy to test local innovations. Successful experiments could be scaled globally. Failed experiments were killed quickly with minimal corporate investment. But perhaps L'Oréal's most underappreciated strategic capability is marketing and storytelling. The beauty industry is unique in that the product experience is deeply emotional and personal. You're not just buying shampoo. You're buying confidence, self-expression, transformation. The physical product matters, but the story surrounding it matters just as much. L'Oréal understood this from the beginning. Eugène Schueller wasn't just selling hair dye. He was selling safety and professionalism. The "Because You're Worth It" campaign wasn't about product features. It was about self-esteem and empowerment. This storytelling ability allowed L'Oréal to charge premium prices for what were often commodity chemicals. The difference between a $20 moisturizer and a $200 moisturizer often has less to do with formulation costs and more to do with brand perception. L'Oréal invested heavily in creating those perceptions. Celebrity partnerships, fashion show sponsorships, magazine advertising, television commercials featuring aspirational lifestyles. And later, influencer partnerships, and social media campaigns. The company understood that beauty marketing needed to evolve with media consumption habits. In the 1970s, television commercials reached mass audiences. In the 2000s, magazine editorials influenced tastemakers. In the 2010s, YouTube tutorials and Instagram posts drove product discovery. L'Oréal adapted to each shift, often ahead of competitors. The company was an early adopter of influencer marketing, recognizing that young consumers trusted peer recommendations more than celebrity endorsements. It invested in content creation, producing tutorials and educational materials that provided genuine value while showcasing products. But here's the key. The storytelling was always anchored in substance. L'Oréal's marketing emphasized both emotional benefits and scientific credibility. You're worth it. And here's the patented ingredient that proves this product works. It's aspirational, and it's effective. What made L'Oréal's business model so successful wasn't any single brilliant strategy. It was how multiple strategies reinforced each other. The portfolio architecture allowed the company to serve all price points. Heavy R&D investment justified premium pricing and created barriers to entry. The fast follower approach minimized risk while maximizing market coverage. Superior marketing created emotional connections that transformed commodities into beloved brands. Each element alone was replicable. Competitors could build brand portfolios. They could invest in R&D. They could hire marketing talent. But recreating the entire system, with its decades of accumulated expertise, relationships, and organizational capabilities, was nearly impossible. This integrated business model allowed L'Oréal to generate consistently high returns while competing in a brutally competitive industry. But executing this model at global scale required solving another enormous challenge. How do you take a fundamentally French company and make it resonate in Tokyo, Lagos, São Paulo, and New York? That's the story of L'Oréal's international expansion, and it's a masterclass in globalization. In 1957, the same year Eugène Schueller died, L'Oréal made a quiet entry into the American market. The company established a small office in New York and began distributing products through a handful of salons. It was a disaster. American hairdressers didn't trust French products. American consumers had never heard of L'Oréal. The company's elegant Parisian positioning meant nothing in a country where pragmatism and value dominated purchasing decisions. L'Oréal retreated, regrouped, and learned a lesson that would shape its next 50 years. Global expansion isn't about exporting your domestic success. It's about understanding that beauty means different things in different places. This realization would transform L'Oréal from a European company into a truly global empire. But the path was neither obvious nor easy. François Dalle understood that conquering America was essential. The United States was the world's largest beauty market, home to powerful domestic brands like Estée Lauder, Revlon, and Max Factor. If L'Oréal couldn't succeed in America, its global ambitions would remain limited. But Dalle also understood that L'Oréal couldn't win by being French. Americans in the 1960s weren't particularly interested in Parisian sophistication. They wanted effectiveness, convenience, and value. So L'Oréal adapted its approach entirely. Instead of leading with luxury brands, the company focused on professional hair care. In 1964, L'Oréal acquired a small American company called Cosmere, which had distribution relationships with thousands of salons across the United States. This wasn't glamorous, but it was strategic. Professional hairdressers became L'Oréal's entry point into the American market, just as they had been in France 60 years earlier. The real breakthrough came with acquisitions. In 1965, L'Oréal purchased Lancôme, which already had a small but prestigious presence in American department stores. In 1974, they acquired Ralph Lauren fragrances, gaining instant credibility with American consumers. And in 1996, L'Oréal made its boldest American move, purchasing Maybelline for $758 million. Maybelline was an iconic American brand, founded in 1915, famous for its mascara. It had nearly universal brand recognition in the United States. But by the 1990s, it was struggling. Outdated, poorly marketed, losing ground to newer competitors. L'Oréal saw opportunity. They kept the Maybelline name and American identity, but completely revitalized the brand. New products, modern packaging, aggressive marketing featuring diverse models and urban aesthetics. Within a few years, Maybelline had been transformed from a fading heritage brand into a vibrant, youthful powerhouse. The Maybelline acquisition demonstrated L'Oréal's evolving philosophy. Don't impose French identity on foreign markets. Instead, acquire strong local brands and enhance them with L'Oréal's resources. This was the opposite of most multinational expansion strategies, which typically involved exporting a successful domestic brand unchanged. L'Oréal was willing to be a chameleon, presenting different faces in different markets. If America taught L'Oréal about adaptation, Asia taught the company about genuine localization. L'Oréal entered Japan in 1963, establishing operations in Tokyo. But the company quickly realized that Asian beauty standards were fundamentally different from Western ones. Skincare mattered more than makeup. Whitening and sun protection were paramount. Texture and feel were evaluated differently. Even color preferences were distinct. For years, L'Oréal struggled in Japan. The company was offering products designed for European skin and hair, marketed with Western beauty ideals. Japanese consumers were unimpressed. The turning point came when Lindsay Owen-Jones became CEO in 1988. Owen-Jones had spent significant time in Asia during his rise through L'Oréal's ranks, and he understood that Asia couldn't be treated as an afterthought or an export market. It required fundamental adaptation. L'Oréal established research centers in Tokyo and later Shanghai. These weren't just regional offices. They were full-scale laboratories conducting original research on Asian skin and hair. Scientists studied differences in skin structure, melanin production, and hair composition between Asian and Caucasian populations. The research yielded genuine insights. Asian skin, on average, produces more melanin and has different sebum composition. Asian hair tends to be thicker and straighter with different protein structures. These weren't just cosmetic differences. They required different formulations. L'Oréal began developing products specifically for Asian markets. Lighter textures that absorbed quickly in humid climates. Whitening products that targeted hyperpigmentation. Hair colors formulated for dark hair without excessive bleaching. The strategy worked, but slowly. Real localization takes time and patience. The breakthrough came with acquisitions. In 2003, L'Oréal acquired Shu Uemura, a prestigious Japanese makeup brand beloved by professional artists. In 2004, they purchased Yuesai, a Chinese cosmetics brand with strong local credibility. These acquisitions gave L'Oréal authentic Asian brands, not French brands attempting Asian positioning. By the 2010s, Asia had become L'Oréal's fastest-growing region. China alone represented a market opportunity larger than all of Europe. And L'Oréal was positioned to capitalize with local brands, local research, local manufacturing, and deep understanding of local preferences. The lessons from America and Asia prepared L'Oréal for its next frontier, emerging markets in Africa, Latin America, and Southeast Asia. These markets presented unique challenges. Income levels were lower, limiting premium pricing. Distribution infrastructure was underdeveloped. Many regions lacked modern retail. Cultural diversity was enormous, with hundreds of ethnic groups, languages, and beauty traditions. And local competitors often had strong positions built on understanding of local needs. L'Oréal's approach was methodical and patient. First, conduct deep research. Before entering Nigeria or Indonesia or Brazil at scale, L'Oréal invested in understanding local beauty practices, income distribution, retail channels, and competitive dynamics. The company hired anthropologists and cultural researchers, not just marketers. Second, adapt products appropriately. In Africa, L'Oréal developed specialized products for textured hair and darker skin tones. In India, the company formulated products that worked in extreme heat and humidity. In Latin America, they created vibrant makeup shades that reflected local aesthetics. Third, price strategically. L'Oréal introduced smaller package sizes at lower price points, making products accessible to consumers with limited budgets. A woman in rural India might not afford a full-size shampoo bottle, but she could buy a single-use sachet. This sachetization strategy opened massive markets. Fourth, build local manufacturing and sourcing. Rather than importing products, L'Oréal established factories in emerging markets, creating jobs and reducing costs. Local production also allowed for rapid iteration based on consumer feedback. Fifth, leverage both global and local brands. In some markets, French heritage and international prestige mattered. In others, local brands had more credibility. L'Oréal used its portfolio strategically, leading with whatever resonated most strongly. The acquisition of Carol's Daughter in 2014 exemplified this approach. Founded by a Black entrepreneur in Brooklyn, Carol's Daughter specialized in products for textured hair. The brand had authentic credibility with African-American consumers that L'Oréal's existing brands lacked. Rather than trying to compete, L'Oréal acquired and preserved that authenticity. By the 2000s, L'Oréal had become one of the world's most active acquirers in the beauty industry. The company was purchasing multiple brands annually, across categories and price points. But these weren't typical corporate acquisitions. L'Oréal had developed a distinctive acquisition philosophy and integration approach. The philosophy was simple: buy strong brands with authentic consumer connections. L'Oréal wasn't interested in distressed assets or turnarounds. They wanted brands that already worked, where L'Oréal's resources could accelerate growth rather than fix fundamental problems. The integration approach was equally distinctive: maintain brand independence while providing central support. When L'Oréal acquired Urban Decay in 2012, they didn't rebrand it or move it to Paris. The brand stayed in Newport Beach, California, with its original creative team. They kept the edgy, rebellious positioning that made Urban Decay distinctive, but L'Oréal provided access to research labs, global distribution networks, and marketing resources that a standalone indie brand could never afford. This approach required restraint, something most corporate acquirers struggle with. The temptation is always to impose central control, standardize processes, and eliminate redundancy. L'Oréal resisted that temptation, understanding that brand authenticity was the most valuable asset being acquired. The strategy worked because L'Oréal's portfolio architecture allowed for coexistence. Urban Decay wasn't competing directly with Lancôme or L'Oréal Paris. Each brand served different consumers through different channels. There was no need to consolidate them. Over decades, this acquisition strategy filled every gap in L'Oréal's portfolio. NYX, for affordable makeup artistry. Kiehl's for natural skincare with heritage. IT Cosmetics for older consumers concerned about skin issues. CeraVe for dermatologist-recommended basics. Each acquisition targeted a specific consumer segment or distribution channel where L'Oréal lacked presence. But managing this global empire required solving a fundamental tension. How do you maintain global efficiency while respecting local differences? L'Oréal developed a framework called glocalization, thinking globally, acting locally. Certain functions remained centralized. Research and development stayed concentrated in major labs, allowing for economies of scale and knowledge sharing. Supply chain and manufacturing leveraged global sourcing and production networks. Financial systems and legal compliance were standardized, but marketing, product adaptation, and distribution were decentralized. Regional teams had authority to modify products, adjust marketing messages, and choose appropriate channels. A skin cream might have the same core formula globally, but different textures, fragrances, and packaging in different regions. This required sophisticated management. Regional leaders needed enough autonomy to be responsive to local markets, but enough coordination to leverage L'Oréal's global scale. It was a delicate balance, and not every competitor could execute it. The organizational capability this created was remarkable. L'Oréal could launch a product in France, adapt it for Japan within months, test it in Brazil, and roll it out globally, all while maintaining quality standards and brand consistency. By 2020, L'Oréal operated in over 150 countries. The company had research centers on 4 continents, manufacturing facilities in dozens of countries, thousands of brands serving billions of consumers with wildly different needs, preferences, and beauty traditions. This wasn't accidental. It was the result of decades of patient expansion, thoughtful acquisitions, genuine localization, and willingness to adapt. L'Oréal succeeded globally, not by being the most French company, but by being the most adaptable, maintaining core strengths in science and brand building, while embracing local differences in every market. But global scale creates new challenges. The larger you become, the more competitors you face. The more markets you serve, the more disruption threatens. And in the 21st century, L'Oréal would face competition and challenges unlike anything in its history. Understanding how the company maintained dominance despite these threats reveals the true nature of L'Oréal's competitive moat. In 2015, a small makeup brand called Kylie Cosmetics launched with a single product, the Kylie Lip Kit. The founder was Kylie Jenner, a 20-something reality TV star with a massive social media following. The first batch sold out in less than a minute. Within 2 years, Kylie Cosmetics was generating over $400 million in revenue. The company had no retail distribution, no traditional advertising, and virtually no employees. It was manufactured by a contract facility and sold entirely online through Instagram. For L'Oréal, a century-old company with 88,000 employees, factories on 5 continents, and billions invested in research, this was a wake-up call. The rules of the beauty industry were changing, and staying on top would require more than just scale and scientific expertise. For most of L'Oréal's history, competition came from predictable sources, other large multinational corporations with similar business models. Estée Lauder was the primary luxury rival. Founded in 1946, Estée Lauder built a portfolio of prestige brands. Estée Lauder, Clinique, MAC, Bobbi Brown, distributed primarily through department stores. The competition was fierce but straightforward. Both companies fought for counter space, celebrity partnerships, and magazine covers. Procter & Gamble represented mass market competition. P&G owned brands like Olay, CoverGirl, and Pantene, competing directly with L'Oréal Paris and Garnier in drugstores and supermarkets. P&G had massive distribution power and marketing budgets, but less focus on prestige positioning. Unilever was another global giant, with beauty brands like Dove, Vaseline, and Tresemme. Like P&G, Unilever competed primarily in mass market segments, with an emphasis on value and broad accessibility. Shiseido brought serious Asian competition, particularly in skincare and prestige cosmetics. Japanese in origin, Shiseido understood Asian markets intimately and competed with L'Oréal for dominance in China, Japan, and Southeast Asia. These competitors were formidable. They had comparable resources, global distribution, and strong brands. But they played by the same rules. Success required developing good products, securing retail placement, investing in advertising, and building brand equity over years. L'Oréal competed effectively because its business model, the multi-brand portfolio, the R&D investment, the professional channel relationships, created sustainable advantages. When Estée Lauder won in prestige, L'Oréal could offset that with mass market strength. When P&G dominated drugstores, L'Oréal could compete through salons and online. The portfolio hedged competitive risks. No single competitor could threaten L'Oréal across all segments simultaneously. But by the 2010s, a new type of competitor emerged that didn't play by traditional rules at all. The rise of indie beauty brands represented an existential threat to companies like L'Oréal. These weren't just small competitors. They represented a fundamentally different business model. Glossier launched in 2014 from a beauty blog. The founder, Emily Weiss, built a community of followers who felt personally connected to the brand. Products were developed based on reader feedback. Marketing was entirely digital and social media driven. The aesthetic was minimalist, authentic, anti-corporate. Glossier's first product, a face mist, generated $1 million in revenue in its first 6 months, with zero traditional advertising. Fenty Beauty, launched by Rihanna in 2017, generated $100 million in its first 40 days. The brand's foundation range included 40 shades, far exceeding industry standards, and spoke directly to consumers frustrated by limited options for darker skin tones. Drunk Elephant, founded in 2012, built a cult following by emphasizing clean ingredients and rejecting suspicious 6 chemicals. The brand's founder had no beauty industry experience, which became part of the authenticity narrative. These brands shared common characteristics that made them dangerous to incumbents. First, they required minimal capital to launch. Contract manufacturers could produce small batches. Social media provided free marketing distribution. Direct-to-consumer sales eliminated retail middlemen. A founder with a good product and compelling story could build a significant brand with less than $1 million in startup capital. Second, they moved fast. Traditional beauty brands took years to develop products, test them, secure retail placement, and launch. Indie brands could go from concept to market in months, allowing them to capitalize on trends before big companies even noticed. Third, they built authentic communities. Young consumers were skeptical of traditional advertising. They trusted influencers, peer recommendations, and brands that seemed genuine. Indie brands, often founded by individuals sharing their personal beauty journeys, felt more authentic than century-old corporations. Fourth, they competed on values, not just products. Indie brands emphasized clean ingredients, sustainability, ethical sourcing, and social causes. They weren't just selling cosmetics. They were selling values alignment. For L'Oréal, this represented a challenge unlike anything in company history. You couldn't compete with authenticity by buying more advertising. You couldn't compete with nimbleness by building bigger factories. You couldn't compete with values by emphasizing your research labs. The rules had changed, and L'Oréal needed to adapt. The indie brand explosion was enabled by a deeper disruption, the transformation of how consumers discovered, evaluated, and purchased beauty products. For decades, beauty purchasing followed a predictable pattern. Consumers saw products advertised in magazines or on television. They went to retail stores, department stores, drugstores, salons, where they evaluated products in person, often with help from sales associates. Trust came from brand reputation, packaging quality, and retailer endorsement. Social media shattered this model. YouTube beauty gurus became more influential than Vogue editors. A positive review from a trusted YouTuber could generate millions of dollars in sales. A negative review could kill a product launch. Instagram transformed product discovery. Instead of seeing airbrushed magazine ads, consumers saw real people using products, sharing results, and offering honest opinions. The algorithm amplified what was trending, creating viral hits that traditional marketing couldn't predict or control. This shift threatened L'Oréal's traditional advantages. The company had spent decades building relationships with retail buyers, negotiating for shelf space and end cap displays. But if consumers were discovering products on Instagram and buying them online, that infrastructure mattered less. L'Oréal's response was neither to resist nor to fully abandon its heritage. Instead, the company pursued a dual strategy. On one side, modernize existing brands. L'Oréal invested heavily in influencer partnerships, hiring beauty YouTubers and Instagram personalities as brand ambassadors. The company built its own content creation capabilities, producing tutorials, product demonstrations, and educational content. Digital marketing budgets increased dramatically, with sophisticated targeting and measurement. On the other side, acquire digital native brands. NYX, purchased in 2014, was already beloved by YouTube makeup artists. IT Cosmetics had built its business through QVC and social media before L'Oréal acquired it. These acquisitions brought expertise in digital marketing and community building. L'Oréal also built its own technology capabilities. The company invested in augmented reality tools that let consumers virtually try on makeup. It developed AI-powered skin analysis apps. It created personalized product recommendation engines. But perhaps most importantly, L'Oréal maintained its retail relationships while expanding digital channels. Unlike pure-play indie brands that only sold online, L'Oréal could offer omni-channel experiences. Discover on Instagram, try in Sephora, purchase on Amazon, return at Ulta. This flexibility became an advantage as consumers wanted choice in how they shopped. While fighting competitive battles, L'Oréal faced another challenge: growing pressure around environmental and social responsibility. For generations, beauty companies operated with minimal scrutiny of their environmental impact. Single-use plastics, palm oil sourcing, carbon emissions from global supply chains, water usage. These weren't consumer concerns. But by the 2010s, younger consumers were demanding accountability. The indie brand movement amplified these concerns. Many new brands positioned themselves as clean, sustainable alternatives to corporate beauty. They emphasized recyclable packaging, natural ingredients, ethical sourcing, and environmental commitments. This positioned L'Oréal and other big companies as the problem. The criticism was often fair. L'Oréal's scale created enormous environmental impact. The company produced billions of units annually, packaged largely in plastic. Its supply chains spanned the globe, consuming massive amounts of energy and water. Its products contained synthetic chemicals that raised safety and environmental questions. L'Oréal could have responded defensively, arguing that its products were safe and compliant with regulations. Instead, under Jean-Paul Agon's leadership, the company embraced the challenge. In 2013, L'Oréal launched its Sharing Beauty with All sustainability program with ambitious targets. Reduce CO2 emissions by 60% per finished product. Achieve zero waste to landfill at all factories. Ensure all palm oil is sustainably sourced. Reduce water consumption by 60% per finished product. These weren't vague aspirations. They were measurable commitments with public reporting and accountability. The company invested in green chemistry, developing new formulations that were both effective and environmentally safer. It redesigned packaging to reduce plastic usage. It committed to ending animal testing globally, even in markets where it wasn't legally required. By 2020, L'Oréal had achieved many of these targets. 35 factories were carbon neutral. Water consumption had decreased 44% per finished product. 96% of palm oil was sustainably sourced. But the sustainability commitment went beyond environmental metrics. L'Oréal also faced pressure around diversity, inclusion, and social impact. The beauty industry has a complicated history with race and representation. For decades, product ranges were limited for people with darker skin tones. Marketing overwhelmingly featured white models. Beauty standards reflected Western European ideals. L'Oréal wasn't immune to these criticisms, but the company worked to address them, expanding shade ranges, diversifying advertising, and acquiring brands like Carol's Daughter and Soft Sheen Carson that authentically served diverse communities. Despite all these challenges, traditional competitors, indie brands, digital disruption, sustainability pressure, L'Oréal has remained the world's largest beauty company by a significant margin. Understanding why requires identifying L'Oréal's true competitive moat. It's not just scale, though scale helps. It's not just R&D, though that matters. It's not just brands or distribution or marketing. L'Oréal's moat is the integration of all these elements into a system that's nearly impossible to replicate. First, the portfolio provides resilience. When luxury slows, mass market compensates. When retail struggles, professional and online grow. No competitor has comparable diversification. Second, decades of R&D created accumulated expertise that startups can't easily copy. Formulation knowledge, testing protocols, safety data, supplier relationships, these take years to develop. Third, global infrastructure allows for rapid scaling. When L'Oréal identifies a winning product or trend, it can manufacture millions of units, distribute globally, and market across channels within months. Indie brands struggle to scale beyond their initial success. Fourth, omnichannel distribution provides multiple paths to consumers. L'Oréal can sell through department stores, drugstores, salons, e-commerce, social commerce, and specialty retailers. Most competitors are strong in one or two channels. Fifth, financial resources allow for patient investment. L'Oréal can spend years developing new technologies, entering new markets, or building new capabilities. Venture-backed startups face pressure for quick returns. Sixth, acquisition capability allows L'Oréal to buy rather than build. When an indie brand gains traction, L'Oréal can acquire it, providing capital and resources while preserving its authenticity. This turns potential competitors into portfolio assets. The moat isn't any single advantage. It's how they reinforce each other, creating a competitive position that's extraordinarily defensible. The beauty industry will continue to evolve. New competitors will emerge. Consumer preferences will shift. Technology will create new disruptions. But L'Oréal has demonstrated, over more than a century, an ability to adapt while maintaining its core strengths. The company that sold hair dyes to Parisian salons now sells personalized skincare through AI-powered apps. The founder, who mixed chemicals in his apartment, would barely recognize the global empire that bears his creation. Yet the underlying principles remain. Invest in science, build strong brands, serve diverse consumers, adapt to local markets, and think long-term. These principles have carried L'Oréal through world wars, economic crises, technological revolutions, and competitive battles. They'll be tested again as the company navigates the future. That future is being written now. And understanding where L'Oréal is headed requires looking at the forces reshaping beauty itself. In 2018, L'Oréal acquired moat, a Canadian technology company that most people had never heard of. The purchase price was never disclosed, but industry analysts estimated it at several $100 million. Moat didn't make cosmetics. It didn't own retail stores. It wasn't a beauty brand at all. Moat built augmented reality software that let consumers virtually try on makeup using their smartphone cameras. This acquisition signaled something profound. L'Oréal's future wouldn't just be about better formulations or smarter marketing. It would be about fundamentally reimagining what a beauty company could be in the digital age. The question isn't whether L'Oréal will remain successful. The question is what success will look like in 20 years, and whether a company built for the 20th century can thrive in the 21st. Walk into a L'Oréal research facility today, and you'll find something unexpected alongside the chemists and formulation labs, data scientists, software engineers, and AI specialists. The company is investing billions in what it calls beauty tech, the convergence of cosmetics, data, and technology. Consider L'Oréal's Perso device, launched in 2021. It's a small countertop machine that analyzes your skin using AI, considers environmental factors like humidity and pollution, and custom formulates skincare or makeup products on demand. Each formula is personalized to that specific moment. This isn't science fiction. It's available for purchase. Or consider Moat's virtual try-on technology, now integrated across L'Oréal's brands. Consumers can use their phone camera to see how different lipstick shades, hair colors, or foundation tones will look on their specific face. The AI adjusts for lighting, skin tone, and facial features in real time. These technologies address a fundamental challenge in beauty: personalization at scale. For a century, L'Oréal succeeded by creating products that worked reasonably well for large segments of consumers. A foundation might come in 20 shades. A shampoo might be formulated for normal or dry hair. This was necessary because mass manufacturing required standardization. But consumers are increasingly diverse, and their needs are increasingly specific. Your skin in New York winter is different from your skin in Miami summer. Your hair, after a salon treatment, needs different care than your hair 3 weeks later. Generic products can't optimize for these variations. Technology makes true personalization possible. Sensors can analyze your specific skin condition. AI can process millions of data points about ingredients, formulations, and outcomes. Manufacturing can move from mass production to customized production. L'Oréal is positioning itself at the center of this transformation. The company has acquired or partnered with dozens of technology companies. It's built internal tech teams that rival software companies. It's filing patents on algorithms and hardware, not just chemical formulations. But this transformation creates profound strategic questions. If beauty becomes truly personalized, do brands matter less? If an AI is formulating your perfect product, Does it matter whether it's called Lancôme or L'Oréal Paris? The brand architecture that L'Oréal spent a century building might become less relevant. And if customization happens at the point of use, either at home or in high-tech retail environments, what happens to traditional supply chains and distribution? L'Oréal's massive manufacturing infrastructure could become a liability rather than an advantage. These aren't hypothetical concerns. They're strategic inflection points that could reshape the entire beauty industry. If technology represents one axis of transformation, sustainability represents another. Climate change, resource scarcity, and environmental degradation aren't distant threats. They're current realities that directly impact L'Oréal's business model. The beauty industry is resource-intensive. It requires water, energy, raw materials, packaging, and global transportation. As environmental regulations tighten and consumer expectations increase, every aspect of this model faces pressure. L'Oréal has set ambitious targets for 2030. All sites, factories, offices, research centers to be carbon neutral. All plastic packaging to be from recycled or bio-based sources. All formulas to have improved environmental or social profiles. All strategic suppliers to participate in the company's environmental programs. These commitments sound like corporate responsibility initiatives, but they're actually strategic imperatives. Regulations are tightening. The European Union is implementing stricter environmental standards. China is cracking down on pollution. Many countries are taxing or banning single-use plastics. Companies that can't meet these standards will lose market access. Consumer preferences are shifting, especially among younger generations. Gen Z consumers research brands' environmental and social records before purchasing. They're willing to pay premiums for sustainable products. They'll boycott companies perceived as irresponsible. Talent recruitment is affected. The best scientists, engineers, and managers increasingly want to work for companies aligned with their values. L'Oréal competes with tech companies and startups for talent, and values matter in that competition. So L'Oréal's sustainability investments aren't just altruism. They're competitive positioning. The company is pioneering green chemistry, developing new ingredients that are both effective and environmentally safe. It's redesigning supply chains to reduce emissions and waste. It's investing in renewable energy and water recycling technologies. L'Oréal is also working on one of the industry's hardest problems: sustainable packaging. Beauty products traditionally come in elaborate packaging: plastic bottles, glass jars, cardboard boxes, often with multiple layers. This packaging serves functional purposes like protection and preservation, but also marketing purposes like shelf appeal and luxury perception. Reducing packaging threatens brand identity. A luxury serum in minimalist recyclable packaging might not command the same premium as one in an elaborate glass bottle. But refusing to change invites regulatory action and consumer backlash. L'Oréal is experimenting with refillable packaging, biodegradable materials, and concentrated formulas that require less packaging. The company launched a waterless beauty initiative, developing solid shampoos, powder cleansers, and concentrated formulas that reduce water content, cutting both packaging and transportation emissions. These innovations could create competitive advantages. If L'Oréal solves sustainable packaging before competitors, it gains regulatory freedom, consumer goodwill, and cost advantages. For most of L'Oréal's history, distribution was straightforward. Products moved from factories to wholesalers to retailers to consumers. Success required securing shelf space and negotiating favorable terms with retail buyers. But the rise of e-commerce, social commerce, and direct-to-consumer brands is fundamentally reshaping distribution. In 2020, accelerated by the COVID-19 pandemic, online sales surged. Consumers who had always purchased beauty products in stores suddenly became comfortable buying online. Many never returned to old habits. By 2023, e-commerce represented over 30% of L'Oréal's sales, a percentage that continues growing. This shift creates both opportunities and challenges. E-commerce allows for direct relationships with consumers. L'Oréal can collect data on purchasing behavior, product performance, and customer satisfaction. This data informs product development, marketing, and inventory management. Traditional retail intermediaries controlled this information. Now brands can access it directly. Digital channels also enable faster innovation cycles. Testing a new product in traditional retail requires months of planning, production, and distribution. Testing online can happen in weeks with real-time feedback and rapid iteration. But e-commerce also intensifies competition. Online, L'Oréal competes not just with other beauty brands, but with every product on the internet. Shelf space is infinite, which sounds positive, until you realize it means there's no scarcity protecting incumbents. A tiny indie brand can appear right next to L'Oréal in search results. Social commerce, purchasing directly through Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube, adds another layer of complexity. Influencers become distribution channels themselves. A positive TikTok video can generate millions in sales overnight. A negative review can tank a product launch. L'Oréal is adapting by building its own e-commerce capabilities while maintaining retail relationships. The company operates direct-to-consumer websites for many brands. It's invested in logistics and fulfillment infrastructure. It's developed sophisticated digital marketing capabilities. But the company also recognizes that physical retail won't disappear. It will transform. The future of beauty retail likely involves experiential stores where consumers try products, receive consultations, and engage with brands, then order online for home delivery. It involves high-tech vending machines in airports and malls for convenient purchases. It involves subscription services that deliver personalized products monthly. L'Oréal is experimenting with all these formats, testing what resonates with different consumer segments. L'Oréal is experimenting with all these formats, testing what resonates with different consumer segments. Gen Z, people born between 1997 and 2012, now represents a significant portion of beauty spending, and they approach beauty fundamentally differently than previous generations. Gen Z is less interested in aspiration and more interested in authenticity. They're skeptical of traditional advertising and celebrity endorsements. They trust peer recommendations and influencers who feel genuine. They value transparency about ingredients, sourcing, and manufacturing. Gen Z is also redefining beauty standards themselves. The rigid ideals that dominated for decades, particular body types, skin tones, facial features, are being challenged. Beauty is becoming more inclusive, more diverse, more individualistic. This shift threatens traditional beauty marketing, which often relied on creating insecurity than offering products as solutions. Gen Z responds better to brands that celebrate diversity and self-expression. L'Oréal is adapting its marketing accordingly. Campaigns feature more diverse models. Messaging emphasizes empowerment rather than transformation. Products are positioned as tools for self-expression rather than fixes for inadequacy. But generational shifts go beyond marketing. Gen Z's digital nativism means they expect seamless online experiences, instant gratification, and personalized service. They're comfortable with AI and automation. They expect brands to take stands on social issues. These expectations require organizational change, not just marketing adjustments. L'Oréal is hiring younger talent, restructuring decision-making processes, and empowering regional teams to respond to local trends faster. The company is also watching the generation after Gen Z, Gen Alpha, born after 2012, who are growing up entirely in a digital, socially conscious, climate-aware world. Their expectations will be even more demanding. But for all its strengths and adaptations, L'Oréal faces genuine risks over the next 2 decades. The first is technological disruption that makes current business models obsolete. If beauty truly becomes fully personalized and digitized, L'Oréal's massive physical infrastructure, factories, warehouses, distribution networks, could become stranded assets. The company has invested billions in capabilities that might matter less in a decentralized, on-demand future. The second is regulatory risk. Governments worldwide are implementing stricter rules on environmental impact, product safety, marketing claims, and social responsibility. L'Oréal operates in over 150 countries, with different and often conflicting regulations. Compliance costs are rising, and regulatory mistakes can be catastrophic. The third is competition from adjacent industries. Technology companies like Apple and Google have the resources and expertise to enter beauty through connected devices and AI-powered personalization. Fashion brands like LVMH and luxury conglomerates could expand their beauty portfolios. Even pharmaceutical companies might blur the line between medicine and cosmetics with advanced treatments. The fourth is cultural backlash. As beauty becomes increasingly commercialized and technologically mediated, there may be movements rejecting it entirely. Minimalism, anti-consumerism, and natural beauty movements could reduce overall demand for beauty products. The fifth is talent and organizational challenges. L'Oréal needs to attract AI engineers, data scientists, and sustainability experts, people who might prefer working at tech companies or mission-driven startups. The company's French corporate culture and traditional hierarchy could be disadvantages in competing for this talent. The sixth is the Bettencourt family ownership structure. The family controls approximately 33% of L'Oréal through a holding company, providing stability and long-term orientation. But family control can also create governance challenges, particularly during generational transitions. Despite these risks, L'Oréal has advantages that position it well for the future. The company has financial strength to invest in transformation. Unlike startups facing investor pressure for quick returns, L'Oréal can pursue decade-long strategies. The company generates billions in annual operating profit, providing resources for experimentation. L'Oréal has accumulated expertise that remains valuable even as technology changes. Understanding skin biology, formulation chemistry, and ingredient interactions doesn't become obsolete because commerce moves online. These fundamentals still matter. The portfolio strategy remains relevant. Consumer preferences will fragment further, not consolidate. Having dozens of brands serving different segments, channels, and geographies provides resilience as markets evolve unpredictably. Global scale provides advantages in sustainability. L'Oréal can invest in green chemistry R&D, negotiate with sustainable suppliers, and implement environmental practices across its operations more effectively than smaller competitors. Size becomes an advantage when tackling systemic challenges. And perhaps most importantly, L'Oréal has demonstrated adaptability over 115 years. The company has survived world wars, economic depressions, technological revolutions, and competitive upheavals. Each time, it adapted while maintaining core strengths. The future strategy appears to balance continuity with transformation. Continue investing in R&D, but expand beyond chemistry into data science and AI. Maintain the portfolio of brands, but acquire digital native brands and build direct consumer relationships. Preserve retail partnerships, but develop omnichannel capabilities. Defend current positions while experimenting with new business models. This isn't revolutionary. It's evolutionary, which has been L'Oréal's approach for over a century. As we step back and reflect on L'Oréal's journey from a chemist's apartment in Paris to a 30 billion euro global empire, several enduring lessons emerge. Lesson 1. Long-term thinking beats short-term optimization. L'Oréal's success is rooted in patient strategy. The company invested in R&D for decades before those investments fully paid off. It entered markets slowly, accepting short-term losses to build long-term positions. It maintained leadership continuity, with CEOs serving for decades rather than years. In an era of quarterly earnings pressure and short CEO tenures, L'Oréal's patience is countercultural and effective. Lesson 2. Diversification provides resilience. L'Oréal's multi-brand, multi-price point, multi-channel portfolio allowed it to weather countless disruptions. When one segment struggled, others compensated. This diversification wasn't accidental. It was deliberately constructed over decades. Building a portfolio requires discipline, as it's tempting to focus resources on whatever's working best at the moment. But true resilience comes from breadth. Lesson 3. Adapt to local contexts while maintaining core identity. L'Oréal succeeded globally, not by exporting French products unchanged, but by respecting local differences while leveraging global capabilities. This glocalization is difficult to execute, requiring both centralized resources and decentralized decision-making. But it's essential for competing in diverse markets. Lesson 4. Acquire rather than fight promising competitors. L'Oréal's acquisition strategy turned potential threats into portfolio assets. Rather than competing with every emerging brand, the company identified the strongest and acquired them, preserving their authenticity while providing resources for growth. This requires humility, recognizing that others can create something you cannot, and discipline in integration. Lesson 5. Invest in capabilities that compound over time. L'Oréal's commitment to R&D created accumulated expertise that competitors couldn't easily replicate. Scientific knowledge, formulation experience, and safety data build on themselves. Each year of research makes the next year more productive. This compounding is a powerful moat, but only if you invest consistently through good times and bad. Beauty is one of humanity's most universal desires. Across every culture, every era, people have sought to present themselves in ways that express identity, attract admiration, or simply feel good about themselves. For 115 years, L'Oréal has been part of that story. The company democratized hair color, making it safe and accessible. It brought scientific rigor to an industry built on mystique and folk remedies. It built brands that resonated across cultures and income levels. It adapted to technological, social, and environmental changes while maintaining its core mission. The next chapter is being written now. Beauty tech, sustainability imperatives, generational shifts, and digital transformation will reshape the industry. L'Oréal will face competitors it hasn't imagined yet, technologies it doesn't fully understand yet, and consumer demands it can't entirely predict yet. But if history is any guide, the company will adapt. It will acquire where it can't build. It will invest where others seek short-term returns. It will balance preservation of core strengths with evolution of business models. Because ultimately, L'Oréal's enduring advantage isn't any single product, technology, or brand. It's an organizational capability built over more than a century. The ability to make millions of people in hundreds of countries with thousands of different preferences feel that beauty is not just for others, but for them. That mission, beauty for all, powered by science, remains as relevant today as it was when Eugène Schueller mixed his first hair dye in a tiny Parisian apartment in 1907, and it will remain relevant long into the future.